And what's up? It's GC Live, Wednesday episode of the show. I am Wes Mitchell. That person you see right beside me is Chris Clark. This is GC Live, Gamecock Central Live. And guess what? We are brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, clinthammond.com, 803-771-6933. Clint helps make this show possible, I should say. I gotta relax, Chris. I gotta catch my breath. It's been a crazy month, man. It's been wild. It's been good, though. It's been really good for Gamecock Central. I think it's been good for Gamecock Nation. And I don't know if we're going to have a show on Friday because there's going to be a lot going on, but we're going to try to hit on as many topics as we possibly can leading into the weekend because, dude, it's Wednesday. So this thing's here. You got an O-line, D-line on Thursday with a 7-on-7 on Thursday. You got another completely separate O-line, D-line camp on Friday with a completely separate 7-on-7 on Friday. And then if you're Jessica Jackson and that South Carolina recruiting staff, you got a number of top targets coming in on official visits this weekend, your sort of second official big recruiting weekend of the Shane Beamer era. And the Gamecocks, Chris, add a pledge today. Shane Beamer teasing the Gamecock fans with the welcome home tweet. Although from what we've heard, that will not be revealed for a little while. But, Chris, plenty of stuff going on, man.
As always, this month is extremely busy. And, we were going over the recruiting calendar off air, of course, yesterday. You and I were, Wes, and there will be a break. There is some light ahead of the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, after this month. Long layoff at the end of June. July will be a period where prospects and coaches and us will be catching our breath. And then there'll be a time period at the end of July where there'll actually be some visits that resume. And South Carolina's got an event coming up then too. But for now, several more days of recruiting activity. It continued over the past couple days. We saw more prospects hitting South Carolina's campus. A big offensive lineman who's originally from Sweden visited yesterday, and we had an update with him, Lucas Simmons, up on GamecockCentral.com this morning. And then, like you said, big official visit weekend. Again, another, I think, double-digit visitor weekend. Several four-star guys on the docket, several priority targets on the docket for official visits. And then, of course, starting tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, we'll be out there at camp again. Going to make it a perfect 10 for 10, I guess, Wes, on camp. So we should see more solid football players, more prospects, plenty more to report on, and excited to continue the activity throughout the month of June.
Yeah, man, lots going on Gamecock Central. Lots going on the GC Live chat. People are all fired up on here. Lots of opinions. Tommy has joined us again. Tommy, we're going to call him 3-star Tommy. He is fired up about the lack of 4 stars and 5 stars right now. Give it a chance, Tommy. This is literally the first, I say it's the first recruiting class of the Shane Beamer era. I don't really count the last one. We'll see. But dadgum, man, you aren't willing to give the guy a chance? You're not willing to give Shane Beamer and company a chance?
I'm just thankful that Tommy's watching the show. I'm not sure why he is, because I think one of our last shows, not the last one, he said we had no clue what we were talking about. So I do appreciate you tuning in still, Mr. Barron, and listening to our comments. We were told that we had no clue what we were talking about, and that we were saying the same stuff that we said when Muschamp was here. So those are Tommy's 2 contributions. But we nonetheless appreciate you watching, listening, commenting. I mean, we're glad. We welcome everyone onto the show. And hopefully we do know a little bit of what we're talking about. I don't know, but we'll let the people be the judge of that. Tommy does not think so. And free country, welcome to think that. We nonetheless appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, when I say rate, review, subscribe, which I don't say that. I think podcasters are supposed to say that every show. I never say that, but I don't say it enough. But when I say rate, review, subscribe, literally whatever you rate the show, that's fine. It's cool. If you think we're a 1-star show, if you think we're a Tommy 3-star show, then then that's cool, man. Whatever. It's cool. We're just glad to have our listeners and our watchers here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and on the podcast platform. Shout out. Let's start before we, I do have some stuff I want to get to, Chris, but anytime a super chatter that is on the YouTube platform, by the way, like our boy Greg dropping $9.99 at us. That, by the way, that's like the price of a month to Gamecock Central, essentially. So,
it is. It's that, and it's also, I think that is just about exactly what I typically pay for a haircut, as you can see, cheap haircuts. And so I think didn't he make a haircut comment? Yes. Well, a haircut comment for you. At first, I thought Greg wanted me to get one so bad that he was giving us $9.99, but we will take that. We will apply it after we pay taxes, of course, to my haircut.
Yes, we my haircut costs quite a bit more, but it is from my girl Aiden. So longtime friend of mine, does a great job, I feel like. So it's worth the cost of admission. But he does have an actual question for us. And man, dude, Chris, the hate is real, dude. By the way, I witnessed Chris put on sunscreen at camp the other day. So for the haters on here who are always giving Chris, about put on some sunscreen, man. Put on some. For one, it's the lighting. We need to get one of those ring lightings. And Chris just has a little bit of a red face. It's not sunburnt. Like it's cool. He's fine. He actually takes very good care of his skin when he's out in the sun. So
I have a skin regimen when I get out
on Twitter, man. They're on you, dude. It's crazy.
I know.
Again, for those of you watching live, we may have to get a certain internet company out here again. I hope that I'm not going in and out because I've got a very fast connection now, and I'm still getting this little thing that blinks up and says my connection is unstable, and I'm plugged in directly to the router. So hopefully no issues there. If they are, I apologize. Y'all can write a certain internet company that I will not name right now. But okay, the question. Let's get to it. Top 3 receivers you think South Carolina is in the game with this recruiting season? Good question. And it actually, Chris, sort of points me in the direction of one thing I wanted to talk about, and that's a fairly new offer for South Carolina. But before we get to him, I think if we're going to talk receivers in South Carolina, we absolutely have to start with Antonio Williams. He maybe holds the record right now for the guy we've talked about the most this recruiting cycle on the show. He's up there at least. Probably talk maybe Oscar Delp is up there, maybe a few other guys, but we've talked about Antonio as much as anyone. First of all, local kid. Second of all, stud, great player. Third of all, position of need. Fourth of all, priority A, number one. I don't know if there's anybody on South Carolina's recruiting board that they have recruited harder than Antonio Williams. Right down the road, Dutch Fork High. And it's going to be an intriguing recruitment, man. It's still, for one, Antonio doesn't really, and I respect this, he doesn't really enjoy the limelight that recruiting brings kids, especially those as highly recruited as him, these days. Doesn't really love it. Isn't a huge talker. I think he'd rather just go play ball, do his thing. So it's interesting. I still think, and Antonio's been he had a busy June, took an early visit to South Carolina, took a visit to Clemson, took a visit to Georgia in there, took a very important visit to Ole Miss. I believe there were some others mixed in there as well, Chris. I know Alabama was on the docket. I don't actually know if that visit took place, but lots of visits for Antonio. I tend to still think among the offers, it's South Carolina and Ole Miss. Now, I tend to think if a Clemson were to offer or if an Alabama were to offer, they would instantly, to steal Chris's phrase, have a seat at the table. Not that they'd instantly get him, but they'd instantly be in the mix. But Justin Stepp, Eric Kimry, sort of tag team in the recruitment here. Shane Beamer very involved. They've done everything you possibly can to recruit this kid to make him a priority. We'll see how it ends up, but to me, if you're going to talk receivers, you're going to talk South Carolina, it has to start with Antonio.
It's the starting point. It's an in-state guy. And it's not just an in-state guy. Wes is a really, really good player. I mean, like the opinions on Antonio Williams, not just from South Carolina staff, not just from us, it's from other coaching staffs, other media people that we know, that we trust. They all have just, and this didn't happen, recently, but it was just, wow, this kid's really good. Like every time you see him in a camp setting, you go check the film, he's just gotten better and better to where he's a really electric player. And he happens to be in state. He happens to be at a school where South Carolina has some ties at Dutch Fork with Eric Kimry. And he happens the other interesting layer, he's at a school in Dutch Fork where there have been a couple of really talented prospects that South Carolina has not been able to get in the last several recruiting cycles. Now, Bryce Thompson, 2018, we're not going to go relitigate that, but South Carolina made that decision. South Carolina also made the decision not to pursue with vigor Jalen Hyatt, who then went on to play at Tennessee as well, for different reasons. And, now recruiting Devin Hyatt, Jalen Hyatt's brother, in the 2023 class. But you look back and there were some in-state guys that South Carolina needed to get in on over the past few years that for whatever reason they did not. And so when you look at Antonio Williams, there's that added layer of this is a kid literally from Columbia, from one of the best high school programs, not only in the state, but in the country. This is a guy you need to go get. And by the way, he happens to play a huge need position. So that's the starting point, Wes, probably not only for receiver, but maybe just this class in general. Like if you're going to name one guy, if you went and asked anybody in that building in South Carolina, who's the guy you need to go get in this class? I would think at least a big majority, the first name out of their mouth is probably going to be Antonio Williams for all those reasons.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, man, big-time prospect, playmaker, need, local, perception, all these different reasons. Let's go down some of the other guys, though. And I think, Chris, if you look here locally, I think Kylie Courton would be another kid. Obviously, he's not the guy as far as recruiting rankings and attention and stuff like that has the 4 stars by his name like in Antonio Williams, but has had a really impressive camp season. You see Virginia Tech hop in with an offer, impressive at Coastal Carolina. He was actually reportedly very impressive at Clemson, even though, they did not offer him, obviously. So I think if you're going to talk about receivers in this class, probably a fairly easy projection to South Carolina there, and him being a kid that I certainly think that they can land. Then, as I teased earlier, man, Landon Sampson. This is a kid, another Texas kid, South Lake, Texas, Carroll High School, 3-star receiver. South Carolina delivered him an offer last week from Justin Stepp. Now he's already set a visit. He originally thought that was going to be an official visit. Now it turns out that's going to be an unofficial visit. You can't take official visits during the July session, but you can't have kids on campus. So he's going to come out, unofficial visit to South Carolina. And based on A, Chris, the feedback I got from him, B, the feedback I got from somebody else close to him, and then C, just the swiftness in which he said, boom, I'm going to take a visit to South Carolina. That shows quite a bit of interest, in my opinion. This is a kid that I think quickly enters the conversation as being, I don't want to me, it's hard to say South Carolina leads for a kid until he visits. But I almost start to feel like they've got a really, really good chance to get this kid.
Yeah, and I got that exact question on the Insiders Forum this morning, with this being kind of a new guy where it accelerated that quickly, Wes, to where there's now an official visit on the books. It's kind of like, what's the deal? What's South Carolina's chances? And really the answer to that is just that. Enough interest both ways to where there's an unofficial visit now scheduled in July, and a kid coming on his own dime all the way from Texas, and South Carolina hosting him for that visit this summer. And so, and an offer going out. So there's enough there. Where it goes beyond that, we're going to have to wait and see. And that's not kind of a cop-out answer. There's just so much newness, not only with this new staff, with recruiting reopening earlier this month, and a kid who's never been to South Carolina to visit with this new staff. There's just a lot of kind of unknowns there. And, between those, Wes, that's three guys. There was one more I was going to mention. I know we're going to dive into the film here on Landon Sampson, and I've gotten some texts on this guy actually since South Carolina offered, just talking about his production and his ability to run routes, set up routes, things like that. But I was going to mention too, Jaden Gibson. I know it was three receivers was the haircut, the $9.99 haircut question. But Jaden Gibson, I think from Florida, is one that would probably be in that conversation. Had a really good unofficial visit to Columbia. Probably going to return for an official visit at some point. Our understanding is he was really engaged, on his visit to South Carolina, the unofficial, multi-day unofficial. So that's another guy in my mind to keep a watch on. But Sampson's a guy that's really interesting, man, and I'm with you. I'm really interested to see, where this goes. Really solid route runner. Justin Stepp, obviously, bringing some ties in the state of Texas from his time at SMU, his time at Arkansas. Knows a lot of guys there. And this is a situation here where he's probably gotten a really nice review from the high school coaching staff about Landon Sampson.
Chris, I would like to think over time that we can sort of, you can a lot of times judge a reaction from a kid. And when I talked to him, it was pretty obvious that there was some real interest in South Carolina and some real interest in Justin Stepp. I think just probably the mutual feedback with Sampson's coach providing obviously positive feedback about him to Justin Stepp, and then the coach providing positive feedback to the kid about Stepp, sort of, I would say, accelerated this thing as far as it not just, he's not very familiar with South Carolina as a program, or as a state, but just the familiarity there with Stepp and what he's all about, and him having recruited the state of Texas, like you said, at SMU and at Arkansas, has gone a long way here. So I tend to think, I'm with you, man. I think when he gets into Columbia, it's sort of one of those things where if everything checks out, then you tend to think South Carolina is going to be in pretty good shape here. Nebraska, for those wondering, Nebraska was sort of the biggest, I would say, biggest offer and biggest factor prior to South Carolina hopping in, but first SEC offer for the kid, and obviously a guy that South Carolina. When you look at the loss of CJ Smith to Florida, I think we were all sort of looking around, Chris, and saying, who can you circle as being the best bets in this class? If you were going to write your best bet article for receiver and update it, yeah. I actually think you can start to make a case for this guy being in the conversation with some of the other kids we just talked about. And as you said, man, Jaden Gibson, I think the key there is just to make sure that additional official visit takes place. That was one of those things where South Carolina has been working hard to get it. I think it's been looking positive for that. I think the feedback there has remained good. The communication has remained good, but now it's just a matter of making sure it actually happens. And then, I think it's often it's worth pointing out, Chris, that these things do not happen in a vacuum as far as recruiting goes. So losing out on a CJ Smith is that's tough. That's a guy South Carolina wanted. He fits what they need. But that takes a receiver spot away from Florida. And, Florida, they're obviously in the state of Florida, you're going to recruit that position very well. You're going to have a lot of options at that position. So does a school you're recruiting against adding a guy maybe help you, with another guy? I know that's sort of projecting out a little bit, but that could ultimately be a factor, with South Carolina and Jaden Gibson.
Yeah, it could be. They're going to have, obviously, with Dan Mullen and what they do offensively, they kind of are going to have some shine on them for some offensive players. And that was going to be a tough situation for a Florida kid who has ties to the school. I think there was always a worry about primarily Florida and then other SEC contenders as well. Competition was huge for CJ Smith. Now, you're in the conversation. There's not any kind of prize for that, for not getting a kid. Eventually you got to sign some of those, but even you hit on this the other day, and we talk about it all the time. It's a reality that Florida loses kids, Georgia loses kids, Alabama. I mean, these schools don't sign everybody. South Carolina has to get to a point where they're signing a requisite number of difference makers. Now, how many is that? How many 4 stars do you need in a class? That's really tough to answer. And somebody asked it in the chat earlier. I can't properly credit who it was, but the answer is, kind of to the question, how many, kind of game-changing recruits and all that do you need in a recruiting class to compete for the East? The answer is a lot. You look at Florida's got a lot of talent on that roster. Maybe not as much as last season. Georgia's got a bunch. Yeah, Chris Turnberg with the question there. You need a lot of high caliber recruits. Now, that's not always 4-star, 5-star. If you're in the top 10 of recruiting 4 or 5 straight years, probably going to have a good football team, right? A really good football team. But high caliber recruit doesn't always equate to, okay, the guy's got to be a 4-star or a 5-star. If you're signing more of them, then you got a better chance. But yeah, I mean, this guy, this Landon Sampson, I mean, this is an example of a guy who plays Texas ball. He's super productive. Does he have a huge SEC offer list? No. But is he a good football player? Looks like it. And Clint Ewers is his quarterback. Wes, we were watching some film on that guy from a camp the other day. He's unreal. With the mullet, slinging sidearm, really good quarterback. And obviously Landon Sampson, one of his favorite targets.
Yeah, man. And for one thing Chris and I have noticed, the mullet is back, dude. Like, there are mullets popping up at camp everywhere this summer. Don't know when that happened, but it is back for better or for worse. And dude, this is a kid that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, quarterback slinging the ball from sidearm and almost underhanded and 3/4, that would have been considered an issue before. Now, the off-platform throw, we've talked about this on the show actually a pretty good bit. The off-platform sort of shortstop throw, throwing from different angles. It's a thing now, man. And if you can do that, it's a new, that's a new sort of, I would almost say, skill that people are looking at in a quarterback skill set. So that's kind of interesting that's become a thing there. Let's see. Do we have any other questions, man? I saw some rolling through. Somebody asked me. Oh, man. Yeah, we can't forget Jeffrey. Jeffrey, hope you're still there, man. Appreciate the tip there. We are adding to Chris's haircut fund. And
I can get my hair washed for the extra fee now, because now I can get my $9.99 haircut and the shampoo, however much it is. So I'll do an add-on now. Much appreciated, Jeffrey.
Yeah, you maybe could get some sunscreen as well if we keep rolling in here. But the highest rated prospect that South Carolina will likely land this cycle, and the highest rated long shot recruit South Carolina. That is a great question, Jeffrey. I
had a take primarily because it popped in my mind first. So like, it's kind of an interesting question, and I like the question about the highest rated long shot recruit we could possibly land. So by that, you kind of mean a guy that maybe you're alive with, but it's going to be really tough to get, doesn't look good, or you need a guy to extend the process that maybe hasn't been here yet, but could eventually get intrigued. There are a few guys that came in my mind for this. There's a couple right in the state. Jaden Lucas, Jalen Sneed. Lucas from Malden, the 4-star DB. Jalen Sneed, the 4-star from Hilton Head. Right now, both long shots, right? Why? Number one, they won't visit. I mean, just call it like it is. Right now, neither of those guys have visited South Carolina since Shane Beamer became the head coach. And we could do an entire show on dynamics and things like that on why, but they have not. Now, if South Carolina was able to get either of those guys on campus, and both of them kind of, Wes, seem a little bit closer to actual decisions. So they may just commit, and then you kind of write them off unless they keep things a little bit open. If either of those guys visit, maybe. But that's why, long shot, still possible. I use that term very loose. South Carolina's not projected to land either of those guys. South Carolina's not even the lead group for either of those guys. But if you could get them on campus. And then another one would be maybe like a guy like Gabe Dendy from Florida, from Lakeland. Knows Torian Gray. That's Torian Gray's hometown. He's done a virtual visit earlier this year. He's a 6.0 4-star, so that's close to 5-star status. He's talked about making either an unofficial or official visit to South Carolina. Longer shot, yeah. He's got family ties to Oklahoma. He likes Clemson. He likes Florida. He does like South Carolina. Right now, a little bit of a longer shot. South Carolina might be in the, top 5 to 7, but not in the upper echelon, but an example of a kid that if you get on campus, maybe you can make a move. So those are kind of 3 guys all ranked pretty high. I think those are all like high 4-stars that would kind of fit that bill, Wes.
Yeah, I think I actually think those sort of fit perfectly what he was looking for, in that it's not a no shot, like it's not a zero. There are, you could come up with reasons why South Carolina could quickly make a move. But right now, if you're putting percentages on it, it would be very, very low. So yeah, I think that fits the mold there for what he's looking for. I would say as far as the other part of the question, and by the way, I was just looking, Jalen Sneed, number 46 prospect in America for the class of 2022. And dude, he is really, really good. Like Jalen Sneed, honestly, is one of my favorite linebacker prospects that we've seen come out of this state in a long time. This dude can do it all. So I would say, now he's already bumped up, even at 46, he's bumped up 17 spots to get there. I would still say 46 and rising, man. Like this kid can do it all. So, if they could pull that off somehow, and he has, he did mention in another interview the possibility of taking an unofficial visit to South Carolina. Recently mentioned that. Now, we've heard that before, and we continue to hear Notre Dame, I would say, has, I don't want to say insurmountable, but has a very nice lead here. They've positioned themselves very well. So long shot, yes, but he fits exactly what you're saying there. And I'm trying to answer the other part of the question, because I'm trying to see who's ranked the highest of the guys that South Carolina, has a solid chance at. And by the way, Chris, would you put a guy like Jayshawn Barham in that sort of long shot, highly rated category, or do you think they're firmly in it with him? Because he's way up there in the Rivals rankings, 76 in the country.
Wes, I tend to put Jayshawn more in the outside of that long shot category. For one reason, he's visited. That's a good starting point, right? He's been on campus for an unofficial visit. He's spoken highly of South Carolina in some interviews. He rarely does interviews, but the one that he's done on the Rivals Network that I saw fairly recently, this was before his visit, he did have some good things to say about his relationship with Mike Peterson, and then he followed that up with a visit. So that's something. I tend to think that South Carolina is in kind of his core group of schools. Now, aside from that, he doesn't talk a lot. Talking to some people up in that area is kind of hard to get a read on. And so it's hard to know, but I would have him outside for me, of that category. That might, Wes, actually fall into the other half of that question of who's a guy that South Carolina could land. Now, was the question could, or he said likely land? I would put Jayshawn Barham in the likely land category. He's more of a could land. And I'm actually kind of going through, even like you look at Oscar Delp, 101 in the country. What is he? The top tight end in the country.
Maybe he's number 2 now for some reason.
Number 2, okay.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say he's likely right now, right? Even with South Carolina, we think in the top 2. Does that mean likely? No. There's not many guys you can point to that are top 100, top 200, top 250 guys where you say South Carolina's probably getting that guy, right? Now, there are a bunch of guys that are possibles. Jaden Gibson, Traquan Fegans, who's should be in that longer shot category, but he's taking an official visit. Omarion Hampton, who you wrote about, Wes, the other day. He's a possible. There's just not a lot of those likely guys right now in that category, just because there's so much left to do,
Yeah, and I'm sort of reading it and the way we're answering it, just so we have some guys to talk about, frankly, is who are sort of the likeliest of the highly recruited guys that South Carolina could land. And I don't think, like you said, I don't know if you'd say any of those guys individually, you would say that they're likely, like percentage chances that they'll be at South Carolina. But I think you sort of feel like if you're in the game with enough of those guys, if you're South Carolina, you're going to hope you can pull it out with a few of those guys. And right now, of the guys we just mentioned, Barham is the highest rated guy that we just talked about. Oscar Delp checks in at 101. So he's right there. I'd maybe say he's maybe the best, most likely out of some of these guys we're talking about that are more highly recruited. But then, Jaden Gibson, you mentioned him, Chris, he's made a huge jump in the rankings. He's 133 in the country now. So he's way up there. And, man, to go back to Antonio Williams, he's still vast. I don't care what anybody says. This kid is vastly underrated, like incredibly underrated. To me, Antonio Williams is one of the top 100 players in the country in my eyes. So he's up there in the personal Gamecock Central rankings, in my opinion. He is a 4-star on the services, but to me, he should be an even higher 4-star. And Ryan Brubaker, that may be the guy that most fits. He's in the conversation, 154 in the country, man. South Carolina feeling really good off the official visit. He was at Tennessee this past week. We'll see if anything shifted there. But that's a guy that really likes South Carolina quite a bit as I'm sort of going down this list that maybe he didn't come to my mind immediately, but as I was looking at the Rivals 250, I think is certainly in that conversation. The kid that's coming in this weekend, Nakai Martinez from Florida, 4-star DB that South Carolina, we'll find out post visit sort of where they stand with him. So this is to me, man, the month of June is sort of it's sort of moving time. Like it's when you find out. We've talked about it. It's when you find out if you're really in it or not. And there's been some guys that South Carolina, I think, has made really good moves with. There's been some guys that South Carolina's probably saying, "Well, we gave it a shot. We're not there with this person. Let's move on." So there'll be more of that this weekend, right?
There will be. I mean, and a lot of the guys that, when you get down into that 100 to the 200, 250 range, Traquan Fegans, Nakai Martinez, Oscar Delp, those are guys coming in this weekend. You look at, there was another one I just saw, Nick James. I mean, Nick James is number 215 in the country. He moved up a little bit in the last rankings, a 4-star defensive tackle, originally from Alabama. Now he plays at IMG Academy. He'll be in this weekend. Jaylon Glover, who was at FSU this past weekend, the 4-star running back out of Florida. He's already taken his official visit to Columbia. So, several guys, in that range. Antonio Kite is a 4-star DB in the top 250, and he's a guy that South Carolina probably leads for right now, Wes. We'll see where things go. But this is a time where both sides are doing some cutting, some trimming, some assessing, whether it's from unofficial visits, official visits, camps. Both sides are kind of feeling each other out, and you're getting a better sense of where you stand with guys. And you need an in-person recruiting to return to properly be able to do that. And so at some positions, they've cast a pretty wide net on guys, and we've seen the board already shift a good bunch. Others, like tight end, for example, with Oscar Delp, he's the guy, and they're still after him. They're still in it. We'll see where it goes. We'll have probably a better sense after this weekend. It's not going to be over immediately. But there's others where, you think a defensive line or wide receiver, like there have been some shifts, some ebbs and flows there.
Well, and tight end, man, that's a spot right now where I think you can sort of, well, for one, dude, I think they've done some really good work with some 2023s already as well. And they have so much talent at that position on campus. It makes sense to just sort of shoot for the stars, go for a guy like Delp. If you miss on Delp, I don't even know if you necessarily have to take a tight end in this class, especially if you feel really good about what you can sell for 2023. And you have some guys there that already, I think you have their attention. So every position there has to be a little different approach. You have to have some nuance about how you handle it. Tight end, also a spot you're going to have one or two on the field. It's not like offensive line where you sort of have to take 2, 3, whatever, maybe more guys every single class. So I think that's a great approach to that, man. There are some guys, Chris, this weekend, and like I said, we may be able to do something that's previewing. We'll certainly have a preview on the site, y'all, on Gamecock Central. Free trial right now. If you're not a member, Visits 2021 is the way to get it. But we can maybe throw something together as well. And but a couple of guys, Chris, are in kind of that category you're talking about, where it's like, okay, is South Carolina truly in this, or are they just in it enough to get a visit? Then there are some guys where I feel sort of like South Carolina may exit the weekend, even if you don't get a commitment publicly during the weekend. That doesn't happen as much anymore. That I think they're going to be in pretty good shape with. And I'll tell you a guy that I think is sort of fairly new on the board publicly, Chris, that I'm just putting together the puzzle pieces here, would be R. Mason Thomas. And, I went as far as to say commit watch. And I said that because I'm just putting the pieces together. One, this is a guy we heard a while back, Chris, that South Carolina staff liked and wanted to do some more with. Two, he was in for a private workout last week, and we heard very positive feedback on the workout that he performed well. And then three, when I see a kid take an unofficial and quickly be like, I'm getting back on campus for an official, that's when my antenna goes up. And to me, that shows interest on his side, interest on South Carolina's side. We weren't really sure where this class was headed as far as linebackers go, so there's a need there. By the way, if you look the kid up, he's going to be listed as like a weak side defensive end, edge type player. But we understand he's probably more of a true inside traditional linebacker for South Carolina. But man, my antenna is up with R. Mason Thomas possibly being a guy who could end up in South Carolina's class. And again, that's not direct information coming from him or his people. It's more just putting together these little pieces of information from various sources.
Yeah, had, like you said, Wes, the workout. Interesting prospect, listed as a weak side defensive end by Rivals.com. So kind of a guy that some people believe could be an edge guy, but South Carolina wanted to get a look at him with his size, 6'2", 6'3", 210, 215 pounds, and say, can this guy be a linebacker for us? And it seems like yes. There are a couple guys that South Carolina is recruiting that maybe fit that bill of being, one or the other, or maybe both. One good example is Donovan Westmoreland, a guy who used to play safety, committed to South Carolina, played safety in high school, moved fairly recently where he's playing off the edge as a pass rusher, and South Carolina took him as such, thought about, hey, maybe we'll give this guy a look at linebacker, but the current line of thinking is play this guy on the edge, Donovan Westmoreland. Well, with R. Mason Thomas kind of gone the other way to where a little bit more viewed in the industry as an edge guy, but for South Carolina, they're saying, hey, we want to see how this guy moves around. Can he play a true linebacker? And the returns we got on that were good. Quickly, like you said, man, accelerated the process to where now he's on the books for South Carolina in an official visit. And I think this is going to be a big weekend for both parties on that front.
Yeah, so he's a guy to keep an eye on, man. I got to think, depending on sort of their approach to defensive back recruiting and priorities and stuff like that, I've got Anthony Rose, sort of, former commitment, then decommitted, then was on campus unofficially. The kid's sort of been not so shy about actually recruiting some other guys to South Carolina since he decommitted. So that sort of tells me he's still very, very interested, in South Carolina, Chris. So I think he's another one you sort of put in that category. Braden Davis's defensive end teammate. I'm gonna let you say his name, Chris.
Oh man, I have the first name.
You had it right. You had worked on this.
It's Tomiwa is the first name, and I'm trying to think. We need to go back play the audio from the head coach. I didn't. Durajaye. No, I don't have it. I'm gonna go back. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go back and listen. and if we do, we're doing a preview show, I will have the proper pronunciation for Tomiwa's name. And in fact, next time you're talking, I'm gonna mute myself, go back and listen to the audio, and then I'm gonna find out right here live on the show. But the first name is Tomiwa D is what we will call him for now.
Okay. And we apologize if he or his family happens to be listening, because we pride ourselves in being correct and accurate about such things, which is why I was going to have Chris do it, because I was like, man, I don't want to be the one to mess this up. Chris is going to effort that right now, but I'll go ahead and speak on it. I think he's a kid that you look at the connections there. You look at South Carolina's sort of little Delaware pipeline that has been brewing here the last few years, which has kind of just popped up out of nowhere. The comfort level there. I really think if you were putting this thing into two categories of visitors that are coming in this weekend, he would go much more towards the category of being someone that South Carolina has a great shot to ultimately land, assuming the timing. I think that's the other thing about all these recruits. The timing of when they want to decide clearly is going to matter as well, because spots are not unlimited. But I think he's certainly in the category that South Carolina's in good shape. Chris, do we have an answer?
We do. It's Tomiwa Darajawai.
Darajawai.
Yes.
Darajawai. Okay. Everybody now at home.
Yep.
Possibly a future Gamecock. We're not gonna screw this up, y'all. We're gonna get this kid's name right. So everybody at home now, practice. So if he ends up at South Carolina, you got it right. But Braden Davis in this weekend, Chris. I know you got some really good feedback from him. He was on that long unofficial visit. It was almost like an official visit, but it was an unofficial visit. Now he takes his actual official visit. What's some feedback? Now they can go read the article, man. It was actually a free article, so no excuses, y'all. GamecockCentral.com. What was your feedback from Braden, man? I know he's a very thoughtful kid. Gives like in-depth answers. He was on GC Live before. Had a great interview with him here. What did you think talking to Braden, man?
Yeah, I mean, lengthy unofficial visit, Wednesday to Saturday. So, really just kind of in-depth, got to hang around the coaches, current players, all the guys in the quarterback room a lot, kind of get a sense of what life will be like as a Gamecock quarterback. And then on Saturday, close things out by working out at a session of summer camp with Marcus Satterfield. And so, really good review. One of he talked about several things. One thing to keep in mind, Wes, is this guy's actually been to Columbia before, to the University of South Carolina's campus, but that was during the dead period, kind of that COVID shutdown period back in the spring. So it was a self-guided tour. He wasn't able to go in any of the athletic facilities. He saw kind of everything from the outside. So he loved the facilities. He took all that in, got to see that for the first time, got to have his first face-to-face contact with Shane Beamer and Marcus Satterfield and the players on the team, and then went and did the workout and enjoyed himself there. So put up some good testing numbers. Physically, obviously checks out, looks the part, and we were really anxious, I think, Wes, to see him throw in camp, and I thought he did a nice job, at least in that setting, and really curious to watch his progression this season on the field.
Yeah, he had some really accurate throws, man. The feedback out there that I heard from people in the building was actually very positive as well. That they liked what they saw from him, as a passer, and all the other stuff was not a question at all. The leadership, the intangibles, then the speed, the size, all that stuff. I think we knew was going to check out, but for him to go out there, deliver the ball, and you're talking about receivers. That's the thing about these camps. You're throwing the ball to receivers you've never thrown with in your life. So there is sort of a little bit of a margin for error there. And I thought he had a really good day. He's got, when you first watch him, he's got a little bit of an unorthodox release, but the ball is very accurate. We saw him make all the throws, to throw a cliche in there, made all the throws, had a good day. And I think it was all in all an outstanding unofficial visit for him. And I imagine, Chris, he's going to have recruiting hat on this week, trying to get other guys in the boat with him. And we're not going to go down the full list here, but a kid that I'm I'm very intrigued by, Chris. Dane Key, Kentucky, 4-star wide receiver. I was under the impression that this kid was a Kentucky lock. And he may still be, or he may end up there, we should say. But this stood out to me, man. This is an excerpt from the Kentucky Rival site, one of their recent articles. He took an official visit to Kentucky already. For one, he took his official to Kentucky, but has not committed to Kentucky yet. So as an in-state kid, kind of reminds me, it's just like if South Carolina was recruiting an in-state kid, and he was supposed to be a lock, and he takes his South Carolina official, everybody would be sitting there. A lot of fans would be starting to wring their hands a little bit, like, why didn't he go ahead and commit? What's going on here? He's looking at these other programs. Visited Oregon, y'all's good buddy Brian McClendon, recruiting him out there. Visited Oregon officially this past weekend. On the books for a South Carolina official this weekend. And so here's the excerpt from our friends at Cats Illustrated, who, by the way, do an outstanding job. They said the Wildcats, led by Vince Morrow, certainly seem to be turning up the heat on Key, who was rumored weeks ago to be lukewarm on the Cats, but things could be turning in the right direction. So Kentucky may be now making a push, but kind of sounds like this was not the lock that I assumed it was. If Steph gets a guy in, gets him on campus, he's always going to have a shot. And Chris, there was another kind of just random connection there that you posted on our board as well.
Yeah, and so Key's father played for Kentucky, but his brother, Devin Key, played for Western Kentucky, and he played there when Clayton White, Gamecock's defensive coordinator, was the defensive coordinator at Western. So, has some familiarity there. Obviously, Dane Key plays a different position. He'd be playing receiver, but there's kind of a staff family connection there to where there's some familiarity. And Key, is a prospect that during baseball season was kind of focused on that, Wes, and now has gotten right back into the football recruiting process. Interesting, like you said, that he's continuing to kind of weigh his options. Certainly doesn't appear to be any kind of Kentucky lock. I agree with your assessment. He may end up going there. We'll see. He's got the family tie. He's an in-state kid, but he's keeping things open. He's taking other visits. He's got the family connection to a coach at South Carolina, and obviously is a guy with talent that plays a need position that South Carolina has prioritized enough to be able to get in on an official. So I think this one's going to be a really, really interesting one to watch. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and again, a 4-star guy. He's in that category that we were talking about earlier, where you sort of say, after this visit, he may just sort of disappear as far as his interest in South Carolina, or we may get such good feedback that he says, man, I've got a great opportunity at South Carolina, because that's the one thing Carolina's going to have. Any big-time receiver, any big-time cornerback that steps foot on this campus, they're going to have it's not just a recruiting pitch, it's a reality pitch. And that's going to be that you have an opportunity to play at the University of South Carolina. So, and I imagine that's what he's going to hear from Step the entire time he's on campus, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look, that's all you can ask for at this point. Again, the month of June has been so busy with guys from the 22, 23, 24, even 25 classes on campus, whether it's for camps, visits. South Carolina needed this time. And so a lot of it is about laying the groundwork in those future classes, but you've got a 22 class that you badly need to fill out, and you need to fill it out with some guys that can play for you, depth fillers, but also some possible difference makers. And so there have been many of those that have visited, or others that are scheduled to visit. A lot of these names that we run through, Dane Key, one of those guys that could potentially make that impact. But all you can ask for at this point with a guy that's never been to campus, an out-of-state guy, is to get him on campus and then see where things go from there. And we'll have a better sense of it, I would think, after this weekend.
Yep, no doubt. Like I said, man, I hope we can get an actual video that we can post about this weekend, but hopefully this at least gives you all a little heads up on everything that's going on, that's going to happen this weekend. Chris, is there anybody else? I know we've forgotten people. Is there anybody else we want to talk about? Thursday and Friday are going to be fun because there's going to be another batch of top kids on campus. I'm excited to see some local guys. Somebody asked about Deuce Caldwell from Malden. Now, Deuce has hinted that he may be done on Twitter. That would lead me to think probably Tar Heels. I would just a guess. He has hinted at that, but I was curious to watch him in person. I've had some high school coaches really brag about this kid to me. DQ Smith, right down the road at Spring Valley, had a great unofficial visit to South Carolina. I think they really changed. I think they changed where they are on the list with him on that visit. He'll be back as well. A kid at Josiah Thompson from Dillon, big-time offensive tackle. He'll be in tomorrow, Chris. So that's certainly not a complete list by any means, but we've got some other guys that I'm curious to see these next couple of days in person.
Yeah, always fun to watch some of the guys in the passing camp, the O-line, D-line camp, watching one-on-ones. But I think for me, Wes, going back to the official visitor slate, just a lot of talent. And I think, again, we've talked about this a ton. There's not a position on this roster where you go, don't worry about it, not a need, right? But the two biggest are receiver and DB. And this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, 5 4-star defensive backs slated to be on campus this weekend. And so that's a significant storyline for South Carolina. But if you could come out of the weekend feeling good about a couple of those, one of them being Anthony Rose, former Gamecock commitment, that would be an outstanding boost for this recruiting class. This is a time where they really need to make a statement with a couple of those guys, or even more. We've seen a couple commitments in the secondary already. Like I said, 5 4-stars, whether they're safeties, corners, nickels, just combined, set to be on campus this weekend for officials.
By the way, as we said earlier, if you're not a subscriber to Gamecock Central, Visits 2021 is the promotional code, gets you access free if you're a new subscriber through August 10th. And Chris, man, I hesitated about whether we were going to push this or not, but then I decided, you know what? We've been nominated, so I just want to win the dang thing. So I'm going to go ahead and push it. If you're on the chat right now, if you're on video, hopefully that actually works as a link. I don't know if it is or not. I'm going to try to resend it. But if you're voting in the free times, the Free Times Best of Columbia comes out every single year. We got nominated for Best Local Sports Website. Gamecock Central did. So if you're voting anyway, go throw us a vote. We'll appreciate it. Like I said, I decided if we're in it, we're going to win it. So we can only do that with your help. Please go throw us a free vote. And vote for Clint Hammond as well. I'm pretty sure our presenting sponsor, Clint Hammond, I was going through voting for who I think is the best in Columbia. And Clint, I believe, popped up as far as the mortgage section. So, of course, vote for Clint. He is our presenting sponsor here on GC Live, ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. I think that's going to do it. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's going to do it, man. We got a lot to get ready for, starting tomorrow for another session of camp. And another session camp on Friday, and then the arrival of official visitors. So looking forward to it, looking forward to the coverage. Make sure y'all come on over, join us on GamecockCentral.com all week, all weekend.
Come hang out, GC, GamecockCentral.com. He's Chris. I'm Wes. Appreciate all the support, and we'll see you on GamecockCentral.com, and then we'll see you back on the show here shortly. Y'all have a good one.